Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea, and I'm joining you for another Creative Design Team video. This month we are making projects for moms, and I thought I would make a couple of cards, showing you some quick coloring techniques. They could be for Mother's Day, they could be for any occasion that you need cards for. This gorgeous set that I'm showing you is called In Full Bloom Cardmaking, and it has this coordinating die which cuts out a panel that fills the whole background of your card. I'm using quite a few stamp sets today, so I will make sure to link everything down in the description box for you. I figured for this background stamp, I'd probably want to stamp it at least a couple of times, so I'm using my Tim Holtz stamping platform and just holding it in place there, picking up the stamp, and then I can put my paper back into place. This is just White Daisy cardstock. And you can see for ink, I'm using Archival. I actually changed my mind on this. So when I started ink blending on top of the Archival ink, I heat set the ink, but it was smudging with the Distress Oxide ink over top. So I ended up going back, repeating the stamping process and using the Intense Black ink with way better results. I do like to use my stamping platform when I'm doing background stamps or larger stamps with lots of detail, because I find I usually end up missing a small little section, and this way I can keep stamping until I'm happy with the result. And here is my finished panel. I would recommend either heat setting or setting this aside and letting it dry for a while before you move on to the next step. Now I've pulled out my all-purpose mat because I like to work on this when I'm ink blending. Both protects my surface and helps the inking tool to slide along a little bit easier. I want to do sort of an ombre effect, so I want this to get lighter towards the top and darker towards the bottom. So this color here is Tattered Rose, and I am starting with that first and just blending it up towards the top as I have less and less ink on my tool. Since this is an Oxide ink, it is going to soften that stamped image a little bit. It's not fully transparent like a dye ink, and so it's going to give it sort of a creamy, soft look to it, which I absolutely love. If you wanted your stamping to be a little bit bolder, you could ink blend the background first and then stamp on top. You could also use a different kind of ink, like regular Distress ink or Close to My Heart dye inks, and that will give you a more crisp look and not this softness of the Oxide ink. Now I'm bringing in the Saltwater Taffy color, which is the newest Distress ink color, and this is a nice little step up. It's a little bit deeper of a color, a little bit brighter. And I'm adding that one next, overlapping some of the Tattered Rose and going more towards the bottom as well. You may have noticed that I'm going in circular motions, and a lot of the time I start off on my mat, on my all-purpose mat, and then work my way inwards. And this is to just try and help avoid getting lines. Oxides work really well for blending and not having lines, as well as having the round inking tool. But working off the edge and blending in circles also helps with that. The last color that I'm using here is Abandoned Coral, and I found all three of these shades work really nice together. This is another shade darker than the Saltwater Taffy, and I'm using it just right at the very bottom and not a whole lot of it, just a little bit. Here's what my finished blending looks like. I love how soft this turned out. Next up, I want to figure out what sentiment I want to put on here. Obviously, I want to say Happy Mother's Day, but I was looking for the right size, and I pulled out my For All Occasions stamp set, and it had Mother's Day all connected, and it was going to be too long for my card. So yes, I did cut my stamp, and it's easy enough to piece it back together on a block, but I figured I'd probably use it more like this anyways, stacked on top of each other. So next up, I pulled out one of my Easter sets. It's super cute, called Somebody Loves You. And I found this really nice scripty happy in there. And I thought this might work better on my card because it will take up more of that empty space at the top. So I'm just testing it out with the stamps to see if this is going to work. And I really liked how that looked. So I'm stamping happy in the Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink. and that's going to kind of be a big punch of color at the top rather than just having it all stamped in black. And then I went ahead and stamped the rest of the sentiment in the intense black ink. And I think those look really good together. I did let the happy overlap the word mothers, and it's just something a little bit different, ties the whole sentiment together. At this point, I decided that I wanted to add something else onto my card front that would add some dimension and some sparkle. So I grabbed out this In Full Bloom Card Making Workshop stamp set because it has a gorgeous butterfly in it. And I grabbed my stamping platform again and then a scrap of Ballerina glitter paper. I decided to use the stamping platform because I knew stamping on top of glitter paper is kind of textured and I'd probably have to stamp it several times to get a good impression. So I'm using Archival ink, and I believe I ended up stamping it 3 times to get it as dark as I wanted it. So here's that finished butterfly. I love how it turned out. I used the coordinating die cut. And then I'm just going to bend up the wings, and once I'm ready to stick it down, I'll just put a little bit of glue on the body of the butterfly. But I'm bringing back in my all-purpose mat because I decided I wanted to do a little bit of painting with a clear shimmer brush and just go around and fill in all of those flowers. This is a newer shimmer brush, so it is pretty juicy. I ended up using a paper towel and just dabbing it off every so often because I didn't want the flowers to get super glittery. The glitter that's inside of it can get like really opaque looking, and I didn't want to lose the detail on the stamps. I didn't fill in any of the leaves or anything, only the flowers. Once I was done with that coloring, I decided I also wanted some splatter. So I just smushed some of the Saltwater Taffy ink out on my craft mat and then squeezed out some of the shimmer brush. And I'm picking it up with a small paintbrush because I wanted small splatters. And then I'm just flicking my brush over top of my panel on that right side and then the top left side. Once that was dry, I decided that I wanted some dimension. So I used some craft foam to pop up my panel, and then I'm using liquid glue to adhere it to the card base. It does take the glue a little bit to dry, so it gives you some wiggle room as far as putting your panel down and getting it on straight. And then I'm just using my stamping blocks to weight it down so that it will dry flat. And then the finishing touch is just to add that butterfly on. I love how this card turned out with the soft blended background and then all these little bits of sparkle that I added. The glitter paper on the butterfly, the glittery splatter, and then also the shimmer brush on the flowers. Just a really soft, pretty card. Now for card number 2, I used the coordinating die for this set, and I cut it out on light peach cardstock. So Close to My Heart cardstock is double-sided. One side is the full strength of the color, and the other side is a lighter version. So I'm using the lighter side. And again, I am also using my stamp platform. Since I'm going to be coloring in on this panel, I decided to use the intense black ink. It can work with both alcohol markers, watercolors, colored pencils, all those things. So it's a really good option when you know you want to color something in, but you're not sure what medium you're going to use. I love the way this set was designed because I didn't even need to move my stamp. I just flipped my paper around and stamped it again, and it filled in the whole panel with the floral design. The detail is so beautiful. You could definitely just leave it there and skip the coloring, but I am using some watercolor pencils. These ones are actually retired from Close to My Heart. We don't carry these ones anymore, but they work really well. So I grabbed out kind of a coral color, a lighter pinky kind of peach color, and then also a green for the leaves. I'm just going to be using these dry. I'm not going to use any water with them. So I'm starting with my darkest color and putting in the shadows. I realized while I started coloring that it would probably help you if I moved you in a little bit closer so you can see some of the detail while I'm working. So here's a little bit closer look, and hopefully you can see how I am flicking my pencil and just adding some actual texture with my strokes. So I'm not trying to blend it really smoothly. I'm just kind of starting in the darkest area and flicking outwards. One of the things I enjoy about coloring with pencils like this is that I don't have to hurry. So I can go around, fill in all the dark areas on the whole panel if I want to, and then go back with my lighter color because I'm not worried about ink drying on me like I do with alcohol markers. You could also do this on a panel of white cardstock. I chose to use the peach color because I knew I was going to be coloring with corals and peaches anyways, and I thought this already adds a layer of color to my flowers and would make a little bit less work for me when it comes to coloring in. Now I've switched pencils to that light peach color, and I am coloring right over top of the darker coral shade and blending it out towards the tips of the petals. And instead of coloring in more flicking strokes, now I'm going in smaller circles and kind of blending and softening that darker color. I decided to bring in a yellow just for the very centers of some of the flowers. There was little areas, so I thought I would add a little pop of yellow in there. Now, if you want, you don't need to take the lightest peach color right to the edge of the petals. You can leave some of the peach cardstock showing through because it's even lighter than the pencil color, and that will add an even brighter highlight. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd really appreciate if you could hit that like button. It lets YouTube know that this is a great video and that they should share it with more people. Now I've switched to the green color and I'm going to start coloring in my leaves. There was only one yellow-green shade that worked for what I wanted, so I don't have a second shade to add like a shadow and a highlight. So basically what I did was just fill in the leaves with one coat of the pencil, and then I went back and darkened the base of some of the leaves with the same pencil, just with a second layer. Now, I don't want to bore you with hours of coloring footage, so here is what that looks like, and I just repeated the same process on the other side to finish off this panel. Now let's pull this card all together. I have a white card base and a piece of white pearl paper. I love the shimmer of this paper. I'm sticking that down with my adhesive, and then I'm going to use the die cut panel to help me place my sentiment in the right spot. I'm using some washi tape to hold it in place so it's not sliding all over, and then I'm going to use Archival ink to stamp my sentiment. The pearl paper is super slippery, so you might want to use a stamp platform for this step, but if you're just freehand stamping the way I am, you just want to make sure you go slowly straight down and straight up because the blocks tend to want to slip a little bit on that slick surface. I did end up using the same Happy Mother's Day, except this time I used the smaller Happy since that fit better in the opening. Now, I always love to have some kind of dimension on my cards, so I decided I was going to pop up this panel, the stamped panel, but I didn't want to use like strips of foam tape or anything, so I'm using the craft foam again, but I cut it with the die so it fits exactly. I glued it on the back side of my colored panel, and then this is adhesive foam, so I peeled the covering off of the adhesive, and now you have to be careful in this step. It just about got stuck down crooked, but I caught it in time, and then I am just adhering it to the front of my card. It could have been finished right here. That would have been a beautiful, complete card, but I decided to grab the Feathered Friend stamp set and stamped and die cut this little bird. I'm going to use more of my watercolor pencils. I have 3 shades of brown, and this lightest shade is a very yellowy brown, but it is a brown color. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to zoom back in, so I don't have any really close-up shots of me coloring this bird. I am using flicking motions for most of the coloring, and I'm trying to go in the direction his feathers would be laying. I'm not trying to get perfectly smooth coloring. I actually want some of that texture from the pencils because it will look more like feathers. Colored the top of his head this kind of medium brown color and brought that down, leaving his chest the lightest and putting some of this on his feathers towards his tail and his wing. And then I'm going to grab that darkest brown and add some more shadows on his tail and his wing. Since I don't have any really close-up views of me coloring, I'm just going to skip to the end here so you can see the finished bird. And then I grabbed some rose gold liquid pearls, and I'm using those to add some accents to this panel. I'm kind of swirling the nozzle as I'm doing the little drops so that I don't end up with long tails of the product landing where I don't want it. And once I have all my little dots down, I'm going to pick up the card and just flick it on the back side to help round out those dots so they don't look like little Hershey kisses. And then I'll set this card aside to air dry. I don't like to use heat tools on liquid products like this. And here is the finished card. We have that nice shimmer in the background from the pearl paper and all the lovely texture from the colored pencil. The creative design team is posting videos every day this week showing different Mother's Day creations. So make sure you check out my description box and subscribe to everybody's channels so that you will get notified when a new video is posted. I will also have a link to the playlist so that you can go back and watch all the videos once they have been posted and added on there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!